Earlier this month, I flew to a country I'd never been to meet up with a bunch of people I didn't know, which could have ended one of two ways: lifelong friendships or murder. Luckily, I'm here recording this voiceover, so things turned out okay. For months, I felt like I was being haunted by TrovaTrip. I'd never heard of them before. Part of me absolutely thought this had to be a scam, but every time I saw Sarah post about it, I thought, well, I want to go. I don't know about you, but sometimes I forget I'm a fully autonomous adult and can just do stuff. Like book a ticket for an art retreat in Crete, face my travel anxiety, and go on a hot girl artist date in Europe. This is the pocket drawing book from Paper Republic. It was, thrown around in my bag for 7 days, so she's got a little bit of wear and tear. Breaking in any new sketchbook, we first made swatches of all of the supplies we brought. As soon as I swatched everything, which I probably should have done before I went on the trip, I realized that I didn't like any of the things that I brought. My go-to warm-up doodle is usually always flowers. They're easy, I'm comfortable with them. I'll admit I was not having a very successful sketchbook time for the first day or so, i.e. we're not going to worry about what's behind this bus ticket that I taped into my sketchbook. Here's a fun and obvious tip. If you draw something in your sketchbook that you don't like and can't erase, just tape something over it. Like I said, flowers are my safety net. There was also this really weird long bear in the upstairs window of one of these shops. I don't know why he was there, but he was weird, and I kind of liked him. Also, thanks to Greece, I am now addicted to peach drinks. Every peach drink I had felt like they had just shoved the entire fruit into the jar. It was delicious. Out of the 3 hotels we stayed at, the Melrose was my favorite. In the pool area, they had these weird, I don't even know what you would call them. They're not technically planters. They had these weird shaped things surrounding the trees by the pool. The drink of choice for the entire trip was the Aperol Spritz. I'm not much of a drinker myself, but when everybody is enjoying an Aperol Spritz, you can't help but draw one. On the next page, I taped the business card from the Safari group, as well as the logo from one of the shops I bought things from. This was still the second day of the trip, so I was still kind of struggling. We sat out by the pool and we drew kind of what was around. So one of the girls had her crumpled bag by the poolside, which I decided to sketch. I drew my own shoe. Why are shoes so hard to draw? One of the things we talked about was proportions and how to fit something onto the page of your sketchbook. I clearly need more practice because I always run out of space. For this palm tree, we were sat by the edge of the water on a bunch of rocks, which I have to admit was very uncomfortable. But the trees had such a distinct shape to them that it kind of made it easier to measure out the segments that you needed to be able to put it on the page. One of my favorite things that we did was actually sketch on Provali Beach. I'm not much of a beach girl. I'm not much of a water girl, but there was something so soothing and wonderful about sitting on yet another pile of rocks, this one moderately more comfortable thanks to my towel, and just sketching. There was this kind of strange rock formation in the water. I'll put in a couple of pictures, and it was just so interesting to be able to sit there and look at it and draw all of the crevices and the angles and the shapes and shadows that the rocks made. Here's another point where I wish I had brought more colors. For this sketch, just isn't really doing it for me. And despite not being much of an ocean person, I did go and touch the Mediterranean, so I can say that I did that. It was cold. If you couldn't tell, this sketchbook isn't exactly in chronological order, but I mentioned the safari that we went on. I would never have put safari and Greece in the same sentence, but it turns out that it was a botanical safari and it was actually very, very interesting. We stopped for an olive oil tasting and there were sheep, goats, there was a giant fluffy dog, and then there was this goose. I have never seen a grown man manhandle a goose before, but he picked this thing up and put it on top of a barrel. And apparently Mr. Moody Goose is afraid of the barrel. Someone said that he once fell off trying to get down, so now he cannot leave the barrel of his own accord, which I guess is nice because he was honking and snapping at everybody. One of the other things we talked about was using a limited color palette, making sure that everything had the same value and that no one color overpowered any of the others. You start out with the lightest color and you gradually build up your midtones and your darkest darks. And it's definitely a lot of trusting the process because it looks kind of bad until you start adding in your white highlights and some of the sharper detailing. We also talked about planning a spread, what sort of elements you should use, how to kind of balance the two sides, picking themes and color palettes, none of which I really did in the sketchbook. Another point of discussion was continuous line drawing. So picking a spot, looking at the object that you're trying to draw and drawing it without lifting your pen off of the paper, or limiting the amount of times that you lifted your pen off the paper. I am not really a fan of continuous line drawing. I can do it, but I don't really like it. That being said, I feel like the pen I brought, the Uniball Air, was just too thick. It's not a bad pen. I really like it. It's very smooth, but I think for me, thinner pens work a lot better for line drawing or for pen drawing in general, which I ended up doing a lot of, to be honest. And part of the appeal of drawing in pen is going back to that whole letting go of perfectionism thing. I mean, once you put the pen down, the pen is down. You can't do anything about it. So I tried to draw the kettle in our hotel room in a continuous line, and I hated it. So then I just switched to doing anything else. We also got to do a food tasting, which was pretty interesting when we were in Hanya. I don't think I have eaten as many desserts as I have in that 7-day period. This was some sort of flaky pastry whose name I can't remember, but as we were going to a couple of the historical churches, we kind of ran into a christening party, and the lady who was setting up for the catering gave us one of the cakes to try. It wasn't my favorite. I found it a little bit too sticky, but it was very nice to be offered a christening pastry. We had some baklava, some lokomares, which are kind of like donut holes, but much lighter. And my favorite was the semolina cake. They poured honey over it, and it was absolutely delicious. 10 out of 10, would eat again. There were a lot of cats everywhere. In Greece, they're community animals, so they help keep the rat and mice population down, and in exchange they get fed and taken care of. So we spent a lot of time gasping and pointing out kittens to each other. Turns out cats are really hard to draw, largely because they are some sort of liquid, but I tried. I think this is okay for a first attempt at drawing a cat. I've never really drawn animals before. We also saw some cows, and I made another attempt at that limited color palette thing. We talked a little bit about portrait drawing. I switched to the colored pencil for some of this, swatched some of the Artex acrylic markers, which were pretty nice actually. And then we just kind of started playing around. We talked about how to render hair. I drew a lighthouse. The goose makes his return. I don't know why we had this strong emotional attachment to this goose, but he was just a freaky little guy, and I don't know, I really liked him. Also, apparently I can draw geese. Here I made another attempt at the contour line drawings, which I still don't like, but maybe I should try it again using a thinner pen, since I've already determined that thinner pens work better for me. I feel like I have more control. We did end up finding an art supply store. I've called them the mystery Hanya markers because they didn't have any sort of name or branding. They were just a case of markers. Really, my only question is about walnut. I'm not sure if they've ever seen a walnut, but I'm pretty sure they're not green. So I don't know if maybe walnut and bronze green got confused, because I would say this is a bronze green and this is a walnut, but I don't know. I didn't make the markers. This is the part of the sketchbook where I get a little bit delirious. We had gone out to our farewell dinner. Our guide, Maria, made us all cry. We got back to the hotel about 1 o'clock in the morning, and both me and my roommate had scheduled a ride to the airport at 4. So we just decided to stay awake and watch Disney's Hercules. And I actually took a nap, but joke's on me because I couldn't check my luggage or check into the airport until 2 hours before my flight. My flight was at 8, so I was stuck at the airport from 5:30 in the morning until I could board at 8:15. So naturally I pulled out the sketchbook. What else was I supposed to do? I went back through my photos. We had gone to the Archaeological Museum of Hanya before we left on our free day. And then obviously I drew the empty wrapper of the Cliff Bar I had for breakfast because I was trapped in the airport. I actually really like the sketch of the water bottle. Thankfully, I had a water bottle to get me through until flight time. And I also just sort of doodled whatever it was I had around. I also wrote down a list of all of the movies I watched while I was on the plane. Back to the Botanical Jeep Safari, I also drew a couple of the flowers that I saw around. Some of the flowers bloom all year round. There are orange and lemon trees everywhere. There are wild poppies. Then when I got home, I was kind of at a loss for things to draw. But I found that I really like working in pen, and one of the things we spoke about was consistency within your sketchbook, having separate things but a consistent practice. This way your sketchbook looks more cohesive. Because if you look at the stuff I was drawing in the beginning, it's kind of sad, but the more I practiced, the more confident I became in my line work. These Victorian hand door knockers. I love the Victorian era. I thought these were so pretty. I wish that I had taken pictures of more of them. And we also have this little guy from the Heracleon Archaeological Museum. He was just a little tiny cow, just lived his best life, so small. A lot of the things that I took pictures of were plants and architecture. The way that both of them were so integrated really appealed to me. There were brick walls where the flowers were just growing out between the bricks. There were plants everywhere. And I think this one has to be my favorite page in this sketchbook. So once I got back, I may or may not have gone to the store, and I may not have been tempted to pick up these vintage color pens. I used those for this page. I really enjoy how this turned out, especially this bouquet of dried flowers and these poppies. Even though they're not the correct color, I think they work so well together, and I really love the sort of dimension and shape that I could make while still leaving everything really loose. I spent a lot of time just playing around, drawing this brickwork heart that we saw in one of the restaurants we ate at. My only complaint is I would really like to know what I was thinking 2 weeks ago when I said I want to work on so many projects, because I don't remember what they are. Again, I really wanted to just roll with the imperfection. I'm not great at perspective, as we can see. It didn't matter because I was having so much fun just drawing. There was this really cool rock that we saw on the Jeep Safari, just kind of out there in the mountains. I, for some reason, took a lot of photos of motorcycles in places. Who knows? We also went to the Archaeological Museum of Hanya, where they had much more in terms of pottery and statues. Here's another little guy from the museum. It was just a glass bird sculpture. I think this guy was supposed to be a lamb, maybe? More plants. I really love plants growing out of brickwork. I went back to my colored pencil and did another sketch. This one is based off of a street poster that I saw. This is a photo that one of the other girls took of this dog sleeping on one of the piers. I've also never drawn a dog before, and I think that's pretty freaking good. My default when it's not flowers is usually food. Gelato, some some cherries that we saw in a painting in one of the art galleries, bruschetta. This fried zucchini, it was so good. I don't know how to fry a zucchini, but I'm gonna figure it out. There was some lavender growing in the flower box of one of the hotels we stayed at. I think it was the last one in Hanya. There were sheep from the Jeep Safari. This was actually one of the coolest things I saw in the museum. It's a child pull-along toy, and one of the artifacts actually had the string still attached to the bull's neck. This way the child could just like roll it along behind them, which that's not something that I would have considered to have been around so long ago. Their pottery is also just wild. It's so beautiful. Orange trees. With every meal we were given shots, and of course I kept trying to draw cats. And this is one of the girls. We sat at this really lovely restaurant in Spilly to have a traditional Greek meal. The sunlight just hit her perfectly. She was very much in love with her cheese. So a lot of this is now drawing from reference, drawing from photos that I took on the trip. And then some of this is just from this week when I ran out of things to draw. I really wanted this to be like all about Crete, but I found myself drawing the same things over and over again, and that was feeling kind of boring. I think another one of my favorite drawings is this really chunky pigeon we saw at the Hanya Archaeological Museum. We had stopped at their cafe for a snack and a drink, and this guy was just sitting up in the corner, hanging out. Let me tell you, Greek pigeons have no fear. They are just walking around, living their best lives, eating food from strangers, being terrorized by children. I really love this chunky guy. He's very cute. The other day, I saved a box turtle from being squished in the middle of the street. These are some of the plants in my neighborhood that I saw as I was taking my usual walk. I found this little chicken mug. I guess she's supposed to be a mug. I would rather like put plants in her, which I guess you can do whatever you want. I really loved her. I thought she was so cute. I was reminded of this Franken bun from Flat Bonnie for one of the Comic Cons. I missed out on pre-ordering it, and I am forever sad because we all know how I feel about monsters. This is a mid-century compact I almost bought to add to my collection. I did not end up buying it, and I still kind of regret not having it. And don't worry, then we get back to more of the Grecian ruins. These were both taken at the Palace of Knossos. I really like the way this one turned out. One of the coolest things I learned is that Greek mythology is actually based in historic events. For the Palace of Knossos, it ties in directly to the story of the Labyrinth and the Minotaur. Their double-headed axe is called the Labrys. That is their symbol of power. That was their symbol of strength. But if you think about it, Labrys, labyrinth. The palace itself is a bunch of large interconnecting rooms that don't necessarily go anywhere, so it is in itself a labyrinth. And this was the Minoan Empire, so the Minoans, King Minos, and because their symbol was the bull came to represent the monster at the center of the labyrinth, or the king in the center of his castle. Sadly, Minotaur is not included. There were also a lot of really dilapidated and disused buildings. And I don't know about anybody else. I guess like there's got to be a whole community of people who love like urban exploring and old buildings, because there's just something beautiful about ruined buildings to me. I just love them. Okay, does that make me weird? Again, there were so many plants. We ended up hiking up to this village. You would think that after hiking to the beach, the last thing I'd want to do is hike up to a village, but I did it anyway, because how many times am I gonna get to hike up to a small village in Crete? Probably just this one time, so I might as well go. And it was lovely. There were plants everywhere. There were cats everywhere. As I was running out of pages, I was also running out of ideas. So this is an octopus that features largely on some of the Grecian pottery. This is the little bronze mouse. I tried to do a figure study of one of the girls while we were on the safari. Some more kind of landscapes. I don't really do a lot of landscapes, and I think I should probably do more. And the goose does make a return. There are many faces of the goose. Have you guys seen Goose Talk, where the attendant dresses the goose in various outfits? I saw one where they made him the Darkwing Duck goose, and my little childhood heart skipped a beat. One of the other things I thought was really interesting was the amount of folding mirrors they had. This is one of the examples of the folding mirrors, and they were really neat. I do think I got better at the cats. Look at that. That's a cat. Pretty sure that's a cat. There were also peacocks screaming at us every 15 minutes or so. And the 27 lion-headed fountain that is supposed to help you age backward if you drink the water from the 27 lion heads. I did not drink the water, therefore I cannot attest to whether or not I am getting younger. Jury's out. I guess I'll let you know. But that is the end of my Grecian sketchbook. I will say that 7 days was not nearly long enough. I always second guess myself when it comes to meeting other people, but I can honestly say that for this trip, not once did I ever experience any sort of awkwardness. It was truly like we had always been friends. I'd wanted to sharpen my art skills on this retreat, which I think I did, but I didn't expect to feel more confident in myself and, frankly, worthy of having the life I want. I've been going through it for a while, and I'm grateful to have met so many wonderful people to share this experience with. Anyway, that's it. I went to Crete, I filled a sketchbook in a month, and maybe the real treasure were the cats we pet along the way. See ya!